Hi there, it's Simon Hurley from Inklips, and thank you so much for stopping by for today's video. I'm going to be sharing how to shade your die cuts on cards to make them add a little bit more color dimension without adding any actual dimension at all on the card. Sometimes this is super helpful if a die just looks really flat and bland. Adding some of the color dimension and shading to them can really make them pop off your card and stand out a ton. I'm showing 3 different ways to do this in today's video, so you have a couple options, starting out with this first one here, using colored Copic markers to shade the image. Now this is really helpful with a die like this one. This is the Flamingo die from Spellbinders, where it has like an attached wing or something for that flamingo, and you really want to make that part of it stand out from the rest of the portion. So I'm taking those dies and I'm lining them up onto some lighter colored cardstocks in my platinum die cutting machine, and this machine is super nice because when I'm cutting I can die cut them all at once, since it has a nice large surface for cutting, and you can even get larger pads for it. So after I've run that through, I'm going to start shading here. Now, like I said, I'm using these Copic markers, which makes it super simple to shade this in. I'm taking a marker that's just like maybe one shade darker than that pink cardstock, and I can go around some of the edges and really feather some of that color in. And it's super nice with these Copics because they have that nice brush tip, so it really makes it easy to feather in some of that color and blend it right back into that cardstock by just really having a light pressure with it. Then I'm going in with a little bit of a darker color, not too dark that it's overpowering, but just enough. And then I'm going to feather that color out as well, and then blend it back out with that lighter color. And it's all about really having a light hand here and feathering the color back into the cardstock so it all blends and looks nice and smooth in the end. And you can see as I'm building up color here, I'm especially doing it on that wing as well, so that portion really stands out when I pop that off of the actual flamingo. So now I'm moving on to the legs of the flamingo here. I'm adding some shadows where the flamingo would sit right on top there. So I'm adding that lighter color that's about one shade darker, and then I'm going in with an even darker color and just kind of going a little bit less than I did with that other color and blending it all out with that color again. Now I'm feathering the color here right back into that lighter cardstock so it all looks nice and smooth. Then for this flamingo die here, you can't cut that beak separately, so again with that shading, all I'm going to do is just add a little bit of orange in there to make it look like a beak. So to build up the background, I thought a heart would go nicely with the flamingo, so I'm making a heart window using the largest of the classic heart dies from Spellbinders, and I'm going to tape that hanging off the edge with some delicate frog tape here so it won't rip the paper, but it'll hold it in place while we're die cutting, and then you have this nice window for that flamingo to sit right inside. So I'm peeling that off, and then I can get started on my sentiment. So I'm using the You Are My Happy stamp set from Hero Arts here, and before I stamp any sentiments down or really commit to anything, since these stamps are clear, it's super nice that you can move the set around and kind of figure out where you want the stamp and which one will work best with your card. So I decided on the You Are the Bestest stamp set in that bottom left-hand corner. There wasn't really anything there, so this sentiment fit super nicely and kept it nice and clean and simple. So after that, I stamped that down. I'm going on and moving it to a blue card base here. And with this blue card base, I'm taking an Altenew ink pad that's a couple shades darker, and I'm just taking the ink pad and swiping it up a couple times, kind of fading it out into that other blue color. This just adds a little bit of shading on the bottom of that heart window so that when the flamingo goes there, it has a little bit of background to it. So I'm adding that white portion onto my card with some foam tape, and then since that wing needs to stand out, I'm adding that on foam tape as well, and all that extra shading there really helps. So I've glued down those legs, and I'm also putting that flamingo on foam tape. And then to embellish it all off, I'm going to be using some Nuvo drops here. So for the eye of the flamingo, I'm using some black Nuvo drops. So I got it started off to the side to make sure there was no air bubbles, and then I'm squeezing a tiny little drop right onto the eye there, really keeping it off the surface there so you get that nice little drop. Then I'm using some clear kind of pink tinted color, and I'm putting that right onto the wing of the flamingo to add a little bit of actual texture to the card. And then to finish the whole card off, I'm spreading some Nuvo drops right around the flamingo in some little clusters with a lighter blue color. These are definitely my new obsession for embellishing my cards, and you'll see them kind of throughout the video, and I will be making a video soon all about these. So for the next card here, I'm going to be showing you how to do the exact same shading except using a gray Copic marker, so it's a little bit more versatile if you don't have a ton of colors. So for this card, I'm using the Camping die set from Spellbinders, and this one is super fun to color in and add your own shading details, especially since the images are pretty simple so you can add your own touch to them. Now I like using some little pieces of scrap cardstock, especially when cutting out little pieces like this. It makes it super simple to use up some of your scraps, and you can find some pretty cool colors, especially if you have some scraps you need to use laying around. So I've cut out all these different images for the camping scene with the tent and the trees, as well as the moon and some stars, and then I can get right on into my shading here. So I'm doing almost the same thing as I did earlier, except this time I'm using a W3 marker for the majority of the images, and I can start doing the feathering here as well. Now the more you want it to be darker, you can just layer the marker up here. You don't necessarily need to use another gray marker, and then you can kind of feather out that color right into that color of the cardstock. It gives a bit of a different effect with kind of a grayish tint, and you can blend it right into that cardstock even more using just a colorless blender marker. So this does give a little bit of a different effect, not so much as a tone-on-tone color, but it gives a really cool shaded color as well. So now for these evergreen trees, to add my own touch to these, instead of just doing some shading around the edges, I did kind of a tree texture to make it look like it was layered up. So you can do some really fun things like this and add some color to those trees. Now on these darker colored cardstocks, I did want to mention that I switched my marker out for a little bit of a darker color. This way you get a little bit more of a standout color against those darker colored cardstocks. So to create the background for the camping scene, I'm taking that same blue Altenew color that I used earlier and a mini ink blending tool, and I'm just going to start blending on my color here. Now I only used this blue color, but you could create your awesome nighttime sky with a bunch of different colors. However, I wanted to keep it super simple and make our little camping die cut scene stand out off the card by keeping the background nice and simple. So after I've done that, I'm taking a light brown colored cardstock, and I'm going to cut that kind of in a hillside manner, really kind of randomly, to create our little ground for the whole scene to take place on. After that, I've cut it out into a card size, and then I'm blending down some darker brown color onto that hillside edge just to give it a little bit shading, and you can kind of tell that adding little details like this really pulls the whole card together, and it's really noticeable when you see those little details. So now I'm using this pretty pink Posh Flyaway Friends stamp set, and I thought this would be super great for the sentiment here that says adventure is right around the corner. So I'm stamping that down using that same dark brown ink. And then I'm stamping down a little chipmunk image from that using some Memento Tuxedo black ink. And this chipmunk was actually designed to sit inside of a little hot air balloon. However, today we're going to make him sitting or kind of peeking outside of that little tent there. So I'm coloring this again in using Copic markers. So I'm starting out with a little bit of a darker shade and blending that lighter shade right in there, so they're super nice for blending. So then to put this whole scene together, I'm using some foam tape for some of these different images. So I'm adding that tent down, and then I foam popped up this little chipmunk here to peek right outside that tent, and I think that's a great image for right inside there. It's super versatile. And then I'm adding those trees right alongside the tent on some foam tape as well to make them pop and stand out against that background. Now once we've completed our die cut scene there, I'm going to show you how to add this glow in the dark effect or embellishment right onto your card. So like I said, these Nuvo drops are definitely a new obsession of mine, and I love these glow in the dark drops, especially for a fun scene like this where you want to make that nighttime sky kind of glow in the dark. So I've taken this glow in the dark yellow color here, and this truly does glow super bright, especially if it's been out in the light for a little while. And I'm going to spread that color right across that moon and also on all the little stars there. And you can kind of put a little bit of a thinner coat on here, and it'll dry in a couple of hours or overnight, and you'll get this fun glossy effect, and it'll glow super much in the dark as well. And also, I'm going to add a bunch of little dots in the background there. Now, after the fact, I actually learned that the bigger dots you add, the more glowy they'll be in the dark and visible. So some of those super tiny dots that you can barely even see there didn't glow too much, but some of the larger ones that I did glow a ton in the dark, and they create that really awesome nighttime sky effect. So then for this bottom part, I wanted to add a little bit of gravel texture. So I'm taking some brown Nuvo drops, and I'm starting from the top of that hill with some larger drops, and then I'm fading it down into nothing, so that adds just a little bit of texture and shine to your cards, and it keeps that masculine theme going rather than adding sequins or anything to embellish. So after that is complete, I'm going to show you on this last card how to use ink pads and ink blending tools to create a really fun shaded effect on your die cuts. So for this card, I'm using these palm tree dies, which are super fun to shade and add dimension to using these inks, and it's pretty simple as well. So I've die cut these out of a bunch of green cardstock here, and I'm taking a color that's a little bit darker than that light green in my little mini ink blending tool, and I'm starting right from the center of that palm tree, right on the edge of my blending tool, and moving that color outwards, kind of like that feathering technique where it kind of blends right into that cardstock then on the outer edge there, and you're adding that nice dark shadow right into the center. Now you could also go around the edges if you want to, but I found that there would be kind of that shadow right in the center of the palm tree, and it gives that realistic looking shadow. So then I took a little bit of a darker color if you want to, and you can even make that a little bit more dramatic and drastic right in the center there. And also if you want to highlight these in different places after you're done shading them, you could go in with a white gel pen and add some detail that way as well. Then for these branches here, I'm going to add some darker brown color to the bottoms there so that when it's hitting that palm tree leaves, it adds that shading and dimension onto that branch. Now once that's all complete, I'm going to be showing you guys how to create your own gold cardstock background in this little window here where we're going to be adding our palm trees. So to do this, I'm going to take my little window die that I've already cut out using some pierced circles, and I'm going to kind of put that around the edge with a little pencil line there to mark where it's going to be. And then I'm using this Nuvo embellishment mousse in this mother of pearl color, which creates this really fun shimmery background. Now this seems like it's going to be super thick, and it is thicker than any modeling paste or anything like that I've used, but I'm taking my finger and just spreading it right across the sheet here, and this goes on super nice and smooth. Even though it seems a little bit thick in that jar, it goes on super smooth and creates that really fun shimmery gold effect. Now I did want to mention I'm trying to add it on thick here because I want there to be a little bit of texture, but you definitely can add it on with a palette knife and make it a lot smoother, as well as with your finger you can really smooth it out, but I was going for some of those chunks in there for that background. So I really love using this stuff for things like this, and it comes in a bunch of other colors, so you'll definitely be seeing me use it in the future, maybe on die cuts or things like that, and there's also a bunch of endless possibilities where it reacts with water and things, so you'll be seeing these more in the future, but this is just one fun way to use them. So after that, I've added that circle die cut panel back onto the card there, and this background has already dried, and I'm going to add my palm trees on here using some foam tape. So I've added that on to pop it up, and then I'm sticking that little palm branch right inside there and sticking it down just using some liquid adhesive. And then I'm doing the same thing with the palm tree next to it, so I can have two little of these palm trees standing next to each other, kind of clustered there. And then I'm adding that little branch right beneath it as well with some liquid glue so I can kind of move it around and have some time to arrange it. Now for the sentiment, I'm adding the Altenew Painted Greetings Miss You sentiment onto here. So I kind of chose one that would work well with this theme, kind of that vacation theme. So I chose Miss You since it was quite small as well, and I'm using a dark blue ink on this lighter blue cardstock so it shows up pretty nicely. And then I can cut that out right along the edge, leaving a little bit of a border. Now I like to do this because it's a little bit better than just adding a square onto your project, and it adds a little bit more detail as well. So then I'm popping that up on foam tape on the side there just for a little bit of dimension, and not much was going on over there, so I decided to add the sentiment there. And then I'm adding more Nuvo drops on here. I'm adding some green for that palm tree kind of in the center where I shaded it, and then on the other one I'm using a little bit of a lighter shade to match the shading and dimension that we gave to that one. So after I've added those fun little Nuvo drops, I'm adding some to the background as well in a lighter blue color here, which is kind of just like a little sky blue color, and I'm clustering those right around the palm trees and the sentiment in the background. So after those are all complete, here are the finished cards. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video and learned a little bit more about shading your die cuts, and maybe we'll give some of these a try. It's a lot of fun to make them stand out and pop up off your cards. So if you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and also on screen there's more of my content if you want to see more of it. You can click that subscribe button to never miss another video like this one, and I would love if you could do that. And also that little blog icon there will lead you over to my website where there's more pictures, information, and a full supplies list for everything I used in today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!